So I hate to admit this, Mark, but I was scrolling through Instagram and I found your profile and I thought, man, here's a guy that looks like I could be friends with. So yeah, man, reached out and you're an ultra runner and it looks like you're a chef as well and an old school punk rock guy. And so yeah, just wanted to chat with you and hear your story, man. But
Yeah, I
give us
think
an intro.
well, it's funny. I've spent most of my life trying to be sort of you know, the individual. In high school, I was one of the few. I grew up in a small mill town outside, right at the foothills of the Adirondacks. So, not a lot of skateboarders, not a lot of punk rock kids. There was a small amount of us. So, very authentic, very original. Same thing, as I worked my way through my professional career after I got out of school, which I didn't go to school to be a chef. The whole time it was always just pushing, pushing, pushing. Like I had to be like nobody else. And I find myself into my 50s. I get clean and sober, and I'm a cliche. Another white dude with tattoos that's gotten sober running long distance in the woods.
Yes. Well, you and me both, man. I mean, yeah, either great minds think alike or we're not that original, one or the other. But
I think it's a little bit of both.
probably a little bit of both, but that's all right, man. But yeah, man, just wanted to hear your story. Like I said, like mine's. So, yeah, just take us back, Mark. Tell us how it all started. You said you grew up outside of the Adirondacks. I'm
Yeah.
guessing you weren't an outdoorsman back then.
No, actually, I mean, my father kind of, he got me into hiking really early. We used to go up and hike in the Adirondacks all the time, do high peaks. And I never really fit anybody that sort of follows along on any of my social media things. As I've worked my way through my sobriety, I've been fairly open and vulnerable about like all the weird things that go on with recovery. And as you work your way through assuming certain things and you start to unlock traumas and things that you'd forgotten about. And my one of the things is I was coming up out of into puberty. So I didn't really fit into the sports. I mean, I played a little bit of soccer, more of a defense minded person. Never been really good at the I've never been like the lead singer guy. I play drums, I'd rather play defense than either be the goalie or the guy or center scoring. My father had picked up early on that he noticed that the one asset that I had on the field was that I could basically just outlast everybody. I didn't have to like sort of bend over and double over after running. I mean, I just had natural endurance, and he had signed me up. He decided that he was going to sign me up to run a local 15K. It's called the Boilermaker, which is actually relatively in the road running world. It's kind of a big race. Okay. Back then it was like Bill Rogers would show up, the Kenyans would show up. It happens in July, and people don't necessarily think of New York, especially upstate or central New York, as being hot, but it gets extremely oppressive because it's in the valley with humidity. So an 80-degree day at about 90% humidity, and it's a Boilermaker for sure. So he signed me up for it, and I was doing some these developmental runs, they called them. We meet every Wednesday, and it was a 10K, sort of the more hilly section of the run. And this was me just going in just before I went into high school. So, I mean, I was also smoking cigarettes with my friends and hanging out in the woods. So I really just sort of mailed it in. And I started getting serious probably about a week and a half before the race, as a 14-year-old boy is wont to do.
Yep.
And I ended up finishing like in third for my age division without even trying. So it was just sort of like one of those situations where it kind of clicked for me that I was probably good at this. Mm-hmm. So I joined track and cross country. Although it was funny when I joined track, which was actually the first sports that I joined outside of soccer when I got into high school. And I couldn't remember what I was good at for running. So I signed up for the sprints because I figured why not get it done with. And I'm no good. I am no good at sprints. As a skateboarder, I don't have high hops. I'm not like a big, tall ollie guy. I'm more of like style and aggression. Yeah. And that was definitely the same way with running. I'm not the short distance guy. So I started running, both cross country and track, and then picked up wrestling as well, which I varsitied in. And as I got better with my running, my father sort of, remember, have you ever seen The Breakfast Club?
Of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, the big reveal, of course, is that we're a little bit of everybody. The Emilio Estevez character and my father's relationship sort of took that turn at that point where it's like, I'd go up to my girlfriend's house after getting up in the morning and putting in 6 miles before school, and then come home, eat breakfast, head up to school, do practice, run home from practice, have dinner, do homework, and then like maybe go out for a run. And then he would drop me off at my girlfriend's house and I would be able to run home when I was done. She lived about 10 miles away, give or take. So it was a lot of running at the time, which, I think, there's so much bad information on running, or at least that I was getting at that point. People were telling us to overstride and, just keep putting in the miles and no pain, no gain and all that, all that nonsense. It's a wonder that I didn't end up injured sooner, to be honest with you, from running. So as we got through high school, I got in my junior year, and my father and a local coach for MVCC, they had a fairly strong cross-country program. There was a runner there by the name of Jerry Lawson at the time. And I was running, at around his clip and around his pace coming into my junior year at like local 5Ks and races like that. So kind of caught the eye of Coleman, and my dad started talking to him, and they had started to get some traction on getting a scholarship from University in Oregon, and which would have been awesome. But the funny thing was, by then I just fell out of like the joy of running was gone, because it's all that I did. My father, I don't, it sounds like I'm kind of shitting on my dad. I'm sorry for swearing. I don't mean to, we all make mistakes as humans and adults. So, I want to be clear, if anybody takes any takeaway that I might say that sounds negative, not at all. He did the best that he could with what he knew how, and I appreciate that for what it is. But at that time, it absolutely sucked the joy out of it. So dropped out of high school, became a punk rock skateboard kid, and sort of vagabonded for a couple of years. I ended up picking up a B team sponsorship from Alva, and was working at a skate shop. So I was able to travel around a little bit, and hit contests, and I was pushing into 1990-ish, right around 89. And Dave Duncan, who was the captain of the Alva team at that time, was like, hey, show up this contest in Saratoga, and just show. All you gotta do is just show well, and we'll bump your sponsorship up. And it's basically at that point, now you start to see pictures in magazines and stuff like that. Nothing at all like today. There wasn't brand ambassadors. It's like people sent in videos or managed somehow or another to swindle themselves onto a team. Which in my case, just because of the fact that I absolutely idolized the Alba guys. I had tattoos, I had dreadlocks, had the attitude. I was made to be on that team, in the sense because I made myself to want to be on that team. I ended up tearing my ACL, my MCL, actually shattered my left knee, no insurance. And
at that competition?
No. Actually, I was a weekend before. It was a weekend before. I was supposed to meet up with my girlfriend at a skate shop in Syracuse that I was at. And she lived in Utica, just about 60 miles away, give or take. God bless her. We didn't have cell phones or anything else like that. So it'd be normal time coming in on the weekend. And sometimes she'd be sitting down there waiting for me for 2-3 hours, waiting for the bus to come in because I decided to go skating before coming up. Or I get into town and go skating and be like, hey, we'll get together around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because usually around that time in the summer, the roads are just soft. It's asphalt, like tar. So you can't really skate on it anyways. So usually midday would be a good time to get caught up. And I was just having one of those days where you just flow. It's like when you're running really long distance and you just hit that cadence and that heart rate, you can go forever. Exactly like that. So everything was just kind of popping for me. It was like my skating was sort of hitting that level that I wanted it to hit. Everything was just peaking properly. And my buddy was like, hey, he goes, you want me to drop you off and you can go hang out with Diana? I was like, well, let's go up to Crisana's ramp. I want to try something up there. And so we got up there, I'm not a vert skater. Like I said, I'm a street skater, but I love skating, or at that point, loved skating pools and loved pool style skating on ramps. It wasn't like a Tony Hawk kind of guy, low, hard, fast on the lip type stuff. And so I just wanted, basically, it was feeling about landing a big front side ollie air. So if people that aren't skaters, that's where the board and the skater lift up off the ramp with no hands touching, and your backside is to the ground. So a lot of times when you try a trick, the first time you don't really land it, you just sort of go through the motions and run off of it. I landed it in such a way that I surprised myself that I absolutely stuck it and went to step off anyways. And everything went forward except for, well, everything stayed where it was except for my left leg. That followed down the ramp with the skateboard, twisted and shattered everything. That was it. I mean, I still skated a little bit after that, but not like I was. Mm-hmm. Ended up meeting this girl who is now my wife. And I decided at that point, basically, once I had finished up, I realized that skating wasn't going to be it for me, that I wasn't going to that wasn't going to be my ticket out. That wasn't going to be anything that meant it wasn't going to be life-changing for me. And basically closed my end of the shop and moved back home, started college. And that's when I met my wife. And, sort of straggled through, the next 25 years are sort of a weird blur. I started doing, I was a writer because of Henry Rollins, which is sort of how this conversation was sparked. Right.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
On those bus trips back and forth, I'm a huge Black Flag fan. And specifically Rollins era Black Flag. Mm-hmm. Just because it didn't feel whiny and it didn't feel over the top macho. I mean, it really came from a place that I understood, at least. And a buddy of mine, John Cannon, at the time, I was traveling back and forth, like I said, using a bus, and he gave me one of Rollins's spoken word tapes. So I guess real quick backstory, when I was coming up through grade school, I was designated as a gifted child, and which anybody that's ever been down that road, that's a blessing and a curse. And I find that a lot of guys that I know, I'm sure females as well, but specifically a lot of guys that I know, when we're told that we're smart, we assume that we know everything, and that really sort of carries along some people into their adulthood. Some of us didn't realize how bad maybe we or our friends had gotten until things got so divisive. And I started to recognize people that I really respected their intellect, counted on the fact that they were smart as sort of I guess like a certificate to, like whatever they wanted, whatever they said, without really thinking it through, because they've always managed to, in a roundabout way, bullshit their way through school. Mm-hmm. So the reason I brought that up is through most of my life, people have always been like, oh, he's so smart. And it's like, my wife will tell you, like when we first started dating, she said something about my Adam's apple. And I'm like, well, where's yours? I was like, let me see yours. Of course, women don't have an Adam's apple, right? And mind you, this is from somebody that, people are like, oh my God, it's got to be so awesome. Like, hanging out with Marc all the time. It's really not. So my friend gives me this tape and Rollins mentions Nietzsche. And to me, that sounded like a Japanese guy, just the way that he dropped it.
Right.
And it was, I think it was your basic, that which does not kill me makes me stronger quote. And that just sort of locked in somewhere around like 1987. So fast forward till about 1991, I'm in school. I had first gone, when I first started college, I was going to do civil engineering, and got through a semester of that, like right at the beginning of AutoCAD. Second semester, I took a psychology course, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is totally what I want to do. If anybody, and we'll probably end up touching on my backstory a little bit. I needed it. I definitely needed therapy, although I didn't recognize. I think deep down I knew it, but I didn't quite lock into it. So I did 2 semesters of psychology and health and human services, and ended up taking a philosophy course. And that changed everything for me, because I realized that I wasn't really looking for the answers to my problems. I was looking for the genesis of my problems. I was looking for truth. I really wanted to get past something. I wanted something greater than myself. So I ended up basically becoming a student of Nietzsche. And I had an instructor who was, he was my counselor, if you will. And Giametti was an old school Thomas Aquinas type guy. I mean, very classical. And I'm coming at him with these very like brash, like, we're going to take dichotomies and smash them together, going to make them coalesce with a hammer. And it was filtering Nietzsche through this sort of hardcore punk ethos. And just on a whim, he asked me if I'd ever thought about Eastern philosophy. And I'm like, I have no interest in anything outside of like Western culture and American specifically, because that's all that I understand. This sort of weird Jean Baudrillard postmodernism that I didn't even realize was going on at the time. And I was like, I've got no interest in, blue people or people with tad hands or, any of this nonsense. Not looking for Jedi mind tricks. And usually, like anything else, once my wife will tell me something and I'm always like, no, I'll push back against it. And as soon as I push back, something else is going like, damn, maybe she's got something there. And same thing with Gio. And he managed to click sort of an early genesis to where I'm at now. Basically from that point, making this a very long story without making it any longer, that I sort of locked into becoming a Buddhist at that point, and started exploring more creative writing and got into doing some poetry and writing like that. Turns out I was fairly good at that, which I ended up traveling for a number of years as a traveling poet, doing performance poetry and slam poetry in the mid 90s. But anyways, as I was doing philosophy, it got to a point where, like anything in education or academia, that starts to get sort of entrenched into schools and really muddies the waters sometimes, I think, when people get like that. And I started cooking again. And I say that because I worked for my uncle when I was a little bit younger. I took a part-time job on top of 2 other part-time jobs while going to school, and discovered that I really enjoyed everything about cooking. Because as I told, when I dropped out of college without getting a degree, I told you, I'm like, good steak, bad steak, can't tell me it's not a steak. And that was my problem with philosophy. So I ended up starting cooking and was still writing. And July 3rd, 1995, I experienced my first panic attack. I didn't know what it was at the time, but there's sort of this disassociation that goes on in a way that, not like any depressive episode that I ever experienced. Really, I had never experienced anything like this. And it carried over in the next day. And the only reason I know the date is because the next day, Foo Fighters' first album came out. Oh. And we were getting ready to go on a quick little road trip up to the Adirondacks to go to this beach. So I ran to the record store that morning to pick it up. And that's the only reason why I actually have a tag date on when this all sort of started. And it sort of kept coming. The thing is I don't know if you've ever experienced a panic attack or like severe anxiety, it can manifest in many ways. And for me, there was almost sounded like when my grandmother, who's diabetic, would experience low blood sugar, or also at times like extreme heart rate jumps. So I thought I was having heart attacks. Like I was in and out of emergency rooms. And mind you, I'm also working as a young chef at this point. So there's a lot of pressure to take on with that. And on top of it, I'm doing performance poetry, which is sort of like being a lead singer, right, which I said I'm very good at. So all these things started manifesting. And my wife was the one that pointed out, she didn't go like, oh, you're having panic attacks and anxiety. She goes, maybe you're just fucking crazy. But that's New York speak for, you might have some issues. And once I started, we didn't have Google or anything at that point, but once I started to do some digging around and really looking into all of it, it made sense. So, at that point it was self-diagnosed. And I found that I was able to sort of create an alter ego where I could sort of transfer some of my worries and concerns and sort of push those out. So I had a nickname growing up, Monk, and that became my stage persona. And part of that was, and I discovered, if I had a vodka 7 with lime before I had to get up there, it just sort of eased things up. And it is fairly obvious to anybody with half a brain, they know where this goes. And that just carried with me until 5 years ago.
Wow.
I was never like the down and out drunk, although, it's funny. I've written about it a couple of times and said, my bottom was like as boring as watching paint dry. But the funny thing is it was really more of a false bottom, because there was so many times from 1995 until 25 years later where there's plenty of bottoms.
Sure.
To sort of tidy that up with a nice little bow, I decided I pushed myself through many years still drinking and managing to put myself sort of at the top of the game in a larger market. We moved to Charlotte, became a marquee name, went to the James Beard House, which is, the equivalent, like if you win a James Beard Award, it's like winning a Grammy if you're a musician. And so, I mean, I was cooking at that level. I was getting national press. I was getting like all kinds of things, but I was also getting so far up my own ass. Mm-hmm. This original joke of Monk became sort of an overriding thing. And I just started didn't even realize when the line switched, even though in my head it was still like being self-depreciative. People just assumed that's who I was. So this project that I was working on when I was at that level just came to pass where it was not good for the business for me to be there. I mean, I showed up every day. I worked hard. It wasn't that. But I definitely wasn't in a good place for myself. And I don't know that they were a good fit for me either, with the amount of pressure that was being put on me. So I ended up doing the next 7 years of basically taking some very ego crushing jobs, and finally got myself into taking a class. My wife she works at a local college, and she's like, you should take a class. So finally I was like, hey, I'm going to take a class. And she goes, oh, sweet. What are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to take pottery, which is, I say you don't make money as a potter. So, but that was the beginning of my recovery. Slowly just learning how to center clay, started to put my life into a certain perspective. And I did really well with that. And then just before the pandemic started, I was going to start rock climbing again, because I kept saying to myself, like, you haven't done anything epic in so long. Like, I mean, I've had a solid life trying to nutshell this whole thing. And I was like, I'm going to get back into doing some rock climbing. So I signed up I was going to sign up for a season's pass at the U.S. Whitewater Rafting Center here in Charlotte, which has a tremendous trail system, these great rock climbing walls, whitewater rafting, kayaking, zip lining. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, it's the type of stuff you see in Portland, but we've got it right here in Charlotte, which is banker town. So to have that here, it's nice. So I went and bought a parking pass, got some information, and I was going to pull the trigger on it. And by that point, the pandemic hit. So everything kind of got shut down. So I was like, well, I'll just continue I had just sort of started doing some running with my wife, who hates running, but ran every day for 2 years on a running streak. And, we went up there, and I was just like, well, let's go out and like run this little trail, see what goes on. She hated it. And I was like, oh my God, trail running, it's cross country. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And that's what brings us here today.
Nice. Nice. Wow, man.
I know that's a lot to digest.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. We have a lot in common, man. You and I both. I was a huge fan of Rollins as well. Took that inspiration and started publishing my own books as well. Nice. I remember when the Foo Fighters album came out that day, because I went to the record store and bought it. Gosh, I don't know, 5 other things you said that I can relate to as well. But
I don't, the funny thing is, I think Dave Grohl kind of gets a short end of the stick a lot. You know what I mean? But Rollins is the same way, right? I mean, like both those guys, like if you listen to Rollins talk about Rollins, it's like people look at him and they're like, oh my God, it's like, that's that dude from Liar. That's like, that he's ripped and tatted and screaming at people in a pair of running shorts and barefoot and charging shit. And it's like, he's so anxiety ridden, like but at the same time, a huge fan of life. Like, right. He had a special on HBO a couple of years ago where he was talking about when he ran into RuPaul someplace. And it's like the quintessential Rollins, like dichotomy of like hard ass and absolute fan of amazing people. Yeah. Dave Grohl, I've always felt like even when he shows up everywhere, my wife is like, this guy's a sellout. Look at him. He was on like a Food Network thing. What the hell is he doing here? And I'm like, who the fuck cares? He's like, he's not there selling something. Like you can tell this guy just loves shit. She doesn't like him. And I'm not a huge fan of like arena rock. And these guys have really become that.
Yeah.
Absolutely appreciate it. I just got done listening to his Audible book yesterday, actually. Dude.
How is it?
He's so fucking amazing. Like, the guy's like the Forrest Gump of rock and roll.
Yeah.
but he doesn't take any of it for granted. Like he's like, and it's not like he's pushing it. You know, some people will be like, oh, you know, you just got to push forward. And it's not. Instead, he's just like in love with everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that with trail running specifically, in the ultra community in general, I mean, that's like, there's that. I've never seen so many people, and they could be competing, still root for everybody. You know, it's like in the last couple of years when things really got just ugly everywhere, like I never felt that really spill in. I saw it in so many other little, like all these little other communities that I'm involved with where it kind of spill over, and even like small pockets of people like were like-minded would eat themselves. It's like, we need more Dave Grohls. We need more fucking Henry Rollinses in the world. You know, they sort of get past it and they're just like, you're into what you're into? Fuck yeah. You're not stepping on somebody? Awesome. And I love people like that.
Totally.
And again, swearing.
Yeah, man. I saw Foo Fighters live when they were a newer band back in the day. And Foo Fighters isn't one of my favorite bands to this day. They're all right, right? But I love them and I respect what they're doing. And I'd still go see them live. And I love Dave Grohl. And Dave Grohl seems like he's just like a fan of everything music,
yeah.
You know, and that's what I love about him. And yeah, I want to read his book, but man, I remember back in the day reading Rollins stuff, and I was just an angry young man, and it resonated with me so hardcore. I was working several jobs, and I remember I had this job working in a gym where I would clean the floors, and they had security cameras in this gym that covered most of the gym except for a few little blind spots. And I would sit down there, and it was like a third shift job. I'd work in the middle of the night. So I'm sitting down at 3 a.m. where the camera can't see me reading Rollins stuff, you know? And yeah, it just inspired me so much. And he was just, you know, he was a straight edge guy back in the day, which I was not. It sounds like you were not, but I that inspired me. Like I looked up to that sort of lifestyle, and he was just a DIY guy with his band, with his writing, with everything. He just didn't want to sell out to anybody and was doing it all himself. And I respected that.
He took a lot of shit when he did like the Gap ads there in the early 90s,
right?
Or whatever. And I remember everybody going like, "Oh, there's your boy selling Gap ads," and I'm like, he's taking that money and flipping it right back around into his publishing company and putting out like all these amazing, like these people that otherwise wouldn't get a book out. And then, you know, but there comes a time and a place, I think, where I found that like Rollins, when I was younger, he was angry and he was like putting all these things out, especially the spoken word stuff. And then I think like, you know, sometimes you be running with somebody and they might get on a trail where it's a little bit higher than you or a little bit lower than you, and you're not quite seeing eye to eye. And I always felt like Rollins's sort of trajectory and my trajectory sort of hit those same highs and lows. It'd just be points where I'm like, nah, he's just a comedian right now, you know? And then a couple of years later, like I'll find him again. I'm like, fuck, I'm so stupid. He's so relevant. You know, it's like, I need, so I think though, I think any artist, or, I mean, man, everybody's like that. Not any artist. I mean, every human being has these. And I think sometimes it gets over, especially nowadays, I find it gets so overshadowed with the presentation that we have to do. And it's so funny that we even have to do it, right, with social media. But, you know, I found when I first started, and I'm going to tangent off here and I'll pull back in, I promise you.
No, you're good, dude. I love this.
When I first started getting sober, the first thing that I noticed that became, I think the thing that stuck out to me the most was where, you know, you'll see it, if you especially go on Instagram on Sundays, right? You're like, #happy. And like, I know your listeners won't be able to see this, but like there in the picture is like a can of something, right? Or a picture of a frosty drink, you know, and it's like with my buds, and like the happiness stops being actually the thing. And instead it becomes the object becomes the happiness, the presentation of the object itself. Right. And I started to recognize, like, at least in myself, how much I had done that, how much I had transferred the internal idea of happiness into this external processes, these things that we put out. Shoot, and I was going to go back to something and I got
no. I'm just wondering what you mean. Like, are you talking about like the writing that you were putting out and the way you're trying to present yourself in the world as a young man?
I think it covers, at least for me specifically. I mean, it sort of hit on so many notes, you know, as far as like recognizing this transference of actual happiness. And yeah, and I guess, I mean, in a roundabout way, I think I found that I didn't allow myself personally to have any happiness in my life, whether it was because I didn't feel like I was worthy of it, or because I hadn't I didn't know how, like, I didn't know what it looked like. There's so many, I mean, there's so many things to really unwrap in that small thing. It's a, you know, it's a pretty messy suitcase to unpack. But you know, I find with especially going back to Henry Rollins and stuff like that. It's that when you've got a community of people that can sort of help you unpack this stuff, it works out. And this is a really shitty way to transfer back into the Henry Rollins thing. When I first jumped off on that tangent, Adam, I was like, oh, this is it. I got it. And I just lost half of it. I followed the trail down and got lost. But you know, going back to, you were talking about Foo Fighters real quick. Yeah, they're like, the first album is amazing. The second album is really solid. And then I think by the third one, I just kind of like, and it's like, I'll catch a song here and there. And it's like, I'm like, okay, that's great. But I'm not, even when I was listening to the book, I'm like, I'm gonna go back and listen to the first album. I was like, oh, that was good. And I listened to the second album. And third one, I think it was Color and the Shape. And then fourth one came on. I'm like, oh, this is getting kind of tedious and whatnot. But the funny thing is like, anytime Dave Grohl shows up in a band, like them Crooked Vultures or Queens of the Stone Age, or anything like that, I'm always like, wow, I mean, that guy is just so amazing.
Yeah.
Speaking of Queens of the Stone Age, I don't know if you know who Mark Lanigan is, Screaming Trees.
Of course.
He just died. He died today.
No way.
5 minutes before you came on, one of my best friends, who's up in New York now, we used to go out like every night. We go to this place called the Penguin, which was it's like the punk rock greaser diner, if you will. Like, I don't even know how to, like, you know, PBR, cheap shots, a lot of cocaine. It's sort of the best way to explain it. But they had a jukebox, and every time that we walk in there, it's like we'd walk over, drop in about $5-10, 5804, which was Queens of the Stone Age off of their can't remember the name of the album now, but it's a red one. That's going to help you out. But anyways, I hadn't listened to him in a while, and then on Sunday I was at work, which is rare for me. Queens of the Stone Age showed up on a like playlist, not one that I was listening to, but just sort of like self-generated, like sort of a Spotify thing. And Queens of Stone Age came on, and as soon as it popped, I'm like, oh my God, 5804. And it's like me and Kurt would be in the middle of this place, like air drumming, because like Dave Grohl was just popping at it. Yeah. So I sent Kurt a text, and he sent me pictures of like the red vinyl that he got for the album recently and all this other stuff. He's a huge vinyl head. And then just before you and I were supposed to get on, he sends me a text, and he's like, yo, Mark Lanigan just died. I'm like, what?
Damn.
Blown away. Yeah.
How did he die? Do you know? I guess it's probably not out yet.
Well, he had COVID last year, or like the beginning of COVID. He ended up with COVID, like bad, like in a coma, the whole 9 yards. He ended up writing a book about it. He's written a couple of books.
Yeah, I just read I think it's his latest book, Sing Backwards and Weep.
That was the second to last one. That was amazing. Okay,
that was amazing. It was a great book.
Yeah. So then he put one out that's more related to his experience with COVID, and it just came out within the last 6 months. Okay. So I don't know if it's health related or not, but I guess he had moved to Ireland, which I was unaware of. And this was like 40 minutes before you and I came on. So there was just like, the only thing that it said is the family was asking to respect their privacy.
Yeah. So, wow.
Nobody knows with his backstory.
Yeah, no kidding. It's amazing that he lasted as long as he did. Wow. I see you've got an Athletic Brewing there. They're a sponsor of the show. I mean, and you're a recovering alcoholic. So, I mean, I'm guessing that you don't have any issues with drinking an NA beer. It doesn't bother you?
No. You know, and it's funny because like beer is probably my biggest trigger point, because of the fact that that's what I ended up drinking more than anything else. Okay. But the funny thing is like, I always liked the taste of it. And I've always enjoyed, like, I always like the one thing that I enjoyed about having a beer, other than when I was like, you know, hunting down 12 more of them after the fact. But I didn't have a normal relationship with alcohol, and I didn't have a background that was normal with it either. But I do like the taste of beer. I mean, there is a palate issue that happens with beer. And as a chef, I mean, I like things that challenge my palate and make it work. You know, soda doesn't do that. I've never been a fan of it anyways. And it, you know, it sort of helps me maintain some social space for myself. And a lot of my drinking, besides sort of learned behavior, was also like as a social protection. We touched on a little bit as far as with anxiety, but it also became a prop that allowed something between me and the the outside world a little bit. It allowed a little bit of protection for me. Just funny because, I mean, people that might listen to this like, oh, wow, you know, he's easygoing, he's gregarious. And I'm like, I'm the exact opposite. As a child, I was painfully shy. So this is more learned for me. And then I did 5 seasons of this docuseries that basically was as Charlotte was sort of growing and burgeoning food scene. And I was sort of stepping down as a like marquee chef and like treating my job as exactly what it was, something that I was good at, but I didn't want it to become my identity anymore. Because that's all my life really consisted of, was Marc as a chef. That's my identity. But I did the same thing with skateboarding and a lot of other things. And I think it became easier to sort of see myself not as a whole, but just as this piece, right? So once I recognized some of these issues, it became evident that also Marc as a drinker was also it. That was sort of my identity. I mean, you know, I go all night, you know, and it was funny because there was a point, I guess this is where we get dark. There was a point. I love
it. This is my wheelhouse.
There was a point when I used to drink that the one thing I always stated was, I'm like, you know, sober Marc, drunk Marc, it's always the same Marc. And that was the one thing I prided myself on. I wasn't the guy that showed his ass or tried to start fights or do any of these other things. Not that I didn't have my moments, but for the most part, it was pretty even keel. Oddly presented as happy, of course, which is very odd. I mean, for somebody who was suffering clinically, you know, is clinically depressed and taking a lot of depressants, I managed to find, I think it's Tennessee Williams, they called it there's a click that happens when you're drinking, and you're just looking for that click. And once that hits, it's just sort of warm. And I always managed to maintain it. I drank, when I first started drinking, it was vodka, and it turned out that I was very good at drinking vodka, and that concerned me. Both my parents are alcoholics. My father, who's still alive, doesn't drink really anymore. My mother never had a healthy relationship with alcohol or really with anything. So I realized that, you know, I probably I don't want to become a vodka drinker, because it was like what I call Polish crack. And I didn't want to, being Polish, I'm like, I don't need this. So I was like, I'll be a beer drinker, because if I have a couple of them, it makes me sleepy. And that didn't last very long, the sleepy part. And, you know, and then I moved down south, and I was never a huge fan of brown liquor until I got down here just about 20 years ago. And then sort of discovered the intricacies and delicious flavors of bourbon and whiskey. So I added those to my repertoire, and still was a happy drunk until suddenly I wasn't. And I started to realize that brown liquor was turning me into something I didn't like. So I took that off my plate. And I mean, I would pick fights with, and not necessarily physical fights, but even just like, you know, psychic fights with, you know, loved ones over nothing. Right. So I took whiskey off the menu and just stuck with beer for a while, and then started to recognize that same thing happened when I was drinking beer. So the funny thing is, that's why I said I never really hit bottom when I quit drinking. But the reality is, I showed up Easter Sunday after being out all night. I think I got home at around 8 o'clock in the morning. I had 2 young children at the time, so you can imagine they were already up. It's like I'm rolling into the house, like just all rocked out from the night before, right. Drinking and party favors. And that should have been enough to probably sort of wake me up, especially given my background and with what I went through with my mother and her relationships with both substance and not so great people. It's like there's all these small moments of bottoms that should have been enough for somebody who's supposed to be smart to click onto. But like I said, for somebody who's smart, I'm pretty stupid. And one of my best friends, LJ, who works at the French Laundry now, I told my wife one time, he's like, I can't do his voice very well, but he sounds just like Billy Bob Thornton, but he's like half his size. Sawed off little runt of a man. He's a brilliant dude. But he told my wife, he goes, he's just he's the stupidest smart man I've ever met. we thought that was kind of funny for its own right, but I didn't realize exactly how on the money that was, until years later.
Totally. Totally. I'm curious, man, when you stopped drinking, did you use any sort of a program or anything, or did you just kind of do it on your own? What did that look
No.
like?
So the funny relationship with punk rock throughout my entire life. And the funny thing, I have to state, like, as a 52-year-old man, almost 52-year-old man, like, I don't listen to as much punk rock as I should, or as most people would assume, you know, especially when, like, I think a lot of people, especially like when I just did a little thing about Henry Rollins' birthday, I think a lot of people assume like that's part of my running playlist. And it's
Right,
like,
right.
my running playlist is like, it's pretty fucking wimpy. You know, I mean, I listen to, because I mean, I like it. I don't want anything. So I don't really want anything getting in my way. So I like atmospheric style stuff. And I don't mean, you know, I listen to, like, it's white boy music.
Oh, dude. I
You
mean,
know,
don't feel bad. I've got Adele on my running playlist, man. So don't feel bad. I hear you.
I listen, you know, it's like a lot of Wilco and Avery Brothers and Iron and Wine. I just like things that sort of set cinematically, you know,
Yeah.
the background without really getting in the way.
Sure.
And I don't want anything, like, I've had so much aggression in my life that I really don't need to add any more to it at this point. Like, I'm not out there to be pissed off. I'm really I'm trying to get away from that, not running away from it, just running more towards the happiness.
Yes.
But, I forgot what I was saying. Sorry. My wife just walked in home from work.
No, that's right. Hi, wife.
Trying to be quiet.
She was trying to be quiet. But I was getting ready so it was right around Thanksgiving time, and I had been slowly doing some work on the house. We have, you know, they're grown men, children now, but as young children, they had the run of the house. Like, when I was growing up, it was very sort of, you know, on one side of the family, you didn't really mess with things in the house, and you definitely had to put things back. It was a very disciplined atmosphere. And I've always sort of treated stuff as such. I mean, I definitely had but enough poverty in my life where I'm pretty protective and I take care of things. Although I probably have too many things at times. So when we had our kids, I mean, it was sort of one of the things is, like, they had the run of the house. We didn't, like, you know, you go here to do that. Like, one thing that I think more than anything else, I loved when, like, my children and my nephews and their friends were over and they're running around the house yelling and screaming. And I don't care if I'd been, like, just got done working an 80-hour work week and felt like crap because I didn't have anything other than liquor, beer, coffee, cigarettes for a diet for like 8 days straight. And just, you know, really looking and feeling like death. But, like, the sound of children having fun at that level is, like, to me, one of the greatest things. Doesn't mean I was perfect with it all the time. There's definitely my days where I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
But for the most part, and, you know, so once the kids kind of got old enough and I started to recognize that I'd been neglecting so many things in my life, including just taking care of stuff around the house. So we started to update the paint around the house. So I got the walls done really quick. You know, got the walls in because, you know, you can paint. We have a fairly open floor plan in the downstairs of the house, and you can really make a quick, large impact just by changing your wall color. But, like, the details of woodwork, right? Nobody likes a paint trim. So I kind of put it off. I had the walls done, but the trim really needed to get, like, it all needed to get done. And so we were getting up on coming around to Thanksgiving time. As a chef, you would expect that if you get one holiday a year where everybody's sort of in the family hosts, we host Thanksgiving because it's a food holiday. So it only makes sense for a chef to do it. So we had my wife's family, who all live down here. They were all coming over for Thanksgiving, and I really wanted to make sure that the trim work was done, and she really wanted to have it done, have the house, you know, looking done, being presentable for guests. So I started the arduous task of actually, like, the hard work, and that became a metaphor later, like not too long after, for my recovery, right? So I got home that day from work. It was a Saturday, and I had found out, I think it was through Instagram, that Night Flight had a channel. So I don't remember if you're old enough to remember Night Flight.
Yeah.
But Night Flight was, you know, a precursor MTV. That's where you saw videos, and they only came on Friday nights, Saturday nights, whatever it was, like after midnight. And like, that was the first place or the first time that I ever saw like a punk band, like actually saw one. I just remember sitting there, and I think it was like they were talking about, and it was a whole episode that was dedicated to punk rock at the time. So they were like, you know, there's bands like the Sex Pistols and the Dead Kennedys, and they're anarchists. And I heard Antichrists, and as a, you know, 13-year-old Catholic boy, that scared the shit out of me. You know? And of course, I come to realize later on that they meant anarchists, but whatever. So I was super excited to see that they had like a channel, and then on top of it is like, so I pull it up on there, and I pay for the subscription immediately. I think it was something ridiculously cheap, like $5 a month or whatever. And I'm clicking through, and I'm like, oh my god, like the rise and fall of Western civilization, all these punk and hardcore documentaries and movies and shit that I like had heard about but never saw, or some of them that I haven't seen since I was 15. And so I was like, oh shit, like this is I know what I'm doing for the rest of the weekend. I'm gonna watch this stuff, and I'm gonna paint the house. So I put it on, and I was like, I went to go grab a beer because it was the next thing to do. And I'm like, and I'd come to recognize I owned my own restaurant at one point. The one thing I noticed when I was there, that was the only time that I ever drank at work. And I realized that once I had a beer in me or a shot in me, my intensity level went to shit. Like my drive, my focus, my ability, everything just sort of went out the window. So I already knew that if I had a beer, I'd end up having more than one beer, and the trim work wouldn't get done. I'd eventually just, you know, or turn sloppy. So I was like, you don't get to have a beer till you get done painting today. You know, I was like, you're gonna have to finish this and you can have it. So I got done with that night, and it was so funny because the whole time I'm just thinking about how good that beer is going to taste now that I put this work in. And I got done, and I really only wanted I wanted vanilla ice cream. So I had vanilla ice cream, and I was like, I'm going to wait till I finish this whole fucking thing before I have a beer. And the thing is, I couldn't remember the last time I didn't have a drink. Like, I mean, well over a decade probably without taking a day off from drinking. That's how normal it had gotten. And again, a lot of people, they'll think like leaving Las Vegas, Nicolas Cage, like that kind of drunk. Not all alcoholism is a personal disease, and so is a recovery. So that's sort of to answer your question. So my experience was as a high functioning alcoholic, and even my relationship with alcoholism, now that I'm far enough into my sobriety, I recognize that it was not, some people think addict and it's like, you know, that sort of chemical dependency. And that was part of it, but that wasn't really my driving force. It was like, as I'm discovering the last year and a half, there's more trauma and social anxieties and things like that came into play. And the alcoholism was sort of a secondary issue. It's not to say that I'm not an alcoholic, but it sort of helped me color, because I never felt, like saying I'm an alcoholic at least made it easy to recognize I had a drinking problem, but it didn't really, I realized that it rang hollow every time I said it, because I knew that there was something more to it than just that. At least my understanding and how I sort of make a difference cognitively between things. And I don't want to get too philosophical, but I was just ready to pull off a different.
No. I totally get it. I totally get it. Like for me, I thought drinking and alcoholism was my problem. And I thought if I quit drinking, my problems are going to go away. But for me, alcohol was the answer to my problems. You know, it was the temporary solution, you know, and I had all this other shit going on in my head that I wasn't really willing to deal with. And I was throwing alcohol on top of it as the answer, you know, and it wasn't, sure, I was drinking too much, but that wasn't the problem. I had to take drinking away and then dig deeper to find out what the real problem was. So
my drinking was a problem, but it wasn't the problem.
Right.
I think is probably the best way to put it. Right. So I've, you know, as I basically, and that's been sort of the origin story. And people ask you like, you know, like, well, what was it like? And I'm like, it was as boring as watching paint dry, because really that's what it got down to. But I realized after so I'm doing, at that point, I was doing this documentary series called Order Fire. And so we'd once a month, we'd have, our seasons ran about 7 months on the average. And we would do, it's a web-based documentary, still up online. And once a month, we would have these screening parties at a local brewery. And after the we did one, and I was like, I didn't really want to do it. I didn't want to do the screening parties because Sundays were my day to be with my family. And after so many years of like, there was the one thing, it was like, I'd go out drinking all night, every fucking night of the week. Friday, I'd get out of work and I'd be scrambling to be done by 2:30. And then from 2:30 to about 5:30, I'd go someplace and would hardcore binge drink, like 3 Bloody Marys, 2 shots, 5 beers. And then like people were like, oh, the band's coming on at 6. Like, nah, dude, I got to go home. Pat myself on the back. Like I'm a family man because I was home.
Right.
Like, shit faced, like absolutely not present. It was so bad, but, so I got really protective of my Sundays. Once I got out of the industry, I wasn't sober at this point, but once I sort of stopped being that chef guy where I wasn't going out and I was just like, I'm just going to have a couple beers at home. And it was funny because it looked like a lot less, but it really wasn't. Yeah. All said and done. Like when I started counting the cans, like, I'm like, yeah, you're not really cutting down though. I mean, yes, I was, but it still was nowhere near like a healthy relationship with alcohol amount. This was, college Saturday night binge drinking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday afternoon. So, so we're doing these documentary things. So I knew at some point that I was going to start drinking again. And then had a family member who went sober at that time, and it was still relatively new. And I didn't want this individual to experience Thanksgiving sober alone, which is also a drinking holiday. So, it was normal for me to start drinking once I got things going on. So I'd already have a buzz. Like I'd be sweating drunk by the time I walked out of the kitchen of my house. We weren't hosting at that time. We'd go over to my in-laws. And I'd get there and it'd be like Bloody Mary, beer, maybe a glass of wine with dinner, and then probably a cocktail to finish things off, and then some coffee to sober up for the ride home, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna out of solidarity, I'm not gonna drink until after Thanksgiving. So that way this individual doesn't have to experience it. Get to the house, open the door. This individual greets me, Bloody Mary, with a Bloody Mary in this individual's hand. I'm like, so then I stayed sober initially out of spite because I was so fucking pissed off. So then once I got through that, I gave myself permission. I'm like, so once we're going to do one of these things, I know I'm going to have a beer. So, you can do it. And the funny thing is, the minute I gave myself permission to drink, never really wanted to again.
Right.
Like the power went away. So, somewhere along the way though, it's like I was talking with a bartender friend of mine who was trying to go sober at the time. And I went public with my sobriety early and very loud, but I still was having a hard time sort of parsing and navigating all the stuff. What ended up happening was this bartender friend of mine was like, well, what I've done is I've allowed myself a limit. So I can have up to 3 ounces a day because I have to taste and do all these other things. And I'm like, well, as a chef, that makes sense. Cause it's always been the lie alcohol tells you is like, well, you can't quit right now because the holidays are coming up, or you can't quit right now because you're going to have to do this wine taste. And you can't quit right now because insert, excuse number A, B, C, D, all the way through. Right. So I gave myself the 3 ounce. I gave myself the 3 ounce rule as well, and rarely had taken that, like had used it ever. So basically it kept that, as my back pocket. But what ended up happening was as my day started to climb, it was like when I quit smoking cigarettes, and like, I thought the money would be the deciding factor when I was tracking it. It's how quick I got to 1,000 cigarettes not smoked, and how fucking gross that was sounding, because you smoke a pack a day, right? Yeah. Not 20 or 40 if you're 2-pack a day. So I sort of did the same thing with my drinking. It became a high score thing for me. It's like, how many days can you go? How many days can you go? So that got me through the first year, because, I couldn't remember going one day, let alone 2, let alone 3. So it just became sort of strong. And when I went loud with it immediately is because I wanted to be held accountable for my behavior, because I knew very well that I could go out and have a drink someplace, some little, like one of my favorite little hideout bars, and I'd get served and nobody would be the wiser. And as long as I kept it in dark there, I'd be able to lie. So I figured if I went loud and proud on the social media about it, I'd probably still be able to get a drink if I wanted it, but they wouldn't do it without like there would be absolutely zero possibility of no repercussions. They would break my balls. Sure. Because my personality demands that kind of stuff. It's like, I'm not a for everybody person. So even my friends know, I'm held to a very high standard, because I speak my mind, I say my thing. So when they have an opportunity to knock me down a couple of pegs and put me where I belong, I absolutely relish that. So I figured this was the only way to keep myself honest. And, you know, I mean, it's been about 5 years. I've had, I think back in October, I had to go up to Brooklyn to pick my son up, my oldest. He was moving back. He went up there for a year, moved up there at the beginning, like right at the worst time during the pandemic. We moved to Bed-Stuy, and he was up there for a year. And then I went to go pick him up. We went to Albany to see my dad. Not the best relationship with him, but we had to go visit him. Imagine Archie Bunker, but far, just, I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, I love the guy to death, but I can't even get into it with on that one. Not because I don't want to, but it's just a whole other thing. And while we were there, my son was like, he goes, I've never been to Boston. I want to go to Boston. And I'm like, well, we can't go to Boston. There's like a nor'easter going on. I started coming up with all these reasons, and I got a 50K, you know, on Sunday, and I'm like losing. I'm like, as I'm sitting here, I'm like, my son just asked me to go do something with him, and I'm coming up with reasons not to go. Mm-hmm. Immediately got online, booked a hotel. We went to Boston in the middle of a nor'easter. My father gave me some money. He was like, hey, you know, go out and have a nice dinner while you're there. And we went to Legal Seafoods in Boston, and it's a tourist trap, but fine dining. And, you know, so me and my son walk in there for lunch, and he was like, hey, Pop, he goes, let's get a glass of wine together. So I had a glass of wine with my son, and I was curious to see what that was going to be like, because it was the first time that I had allowed myself, you know, besides just like going to the brewery where we did things, I might take a taste. And when I say a taste, it's like they'd pour 2 ounces and I would take a taste, and there'd be plenty left in the glass. And I had to sort of, once we got done with the glass of wine and blah, blah, blah. And then we went out for tacos that night or the next night with a friend of mine. So we went to this place at the guys from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones own, in just north of Cambridge, like right towards the Chinatown area. And I think it's called Red Door Tacos. And one of my best friends lives like right upstairs from it. So we went over there. My son got a beer. My best friend got a beer. One of my good friends got a beer. And I was like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, Mom, I mean, I'm on vacation. I can have a beer. And I was like, give me a Topo Chico. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it was interesting because I was having a hard time navigating around what had just happened, because I'm like, did my high score just go to zero? Am I still sober? Like all these things I'm like, I had to deal with. And I recognize that, you know, my sobriety is my sobriety. Mm-hmm. It's not open for anybody else to interpret. It's open for other people to have conversations about, by all means. I mean, I love when people ask hard questions about it, because sometimes we don't have the wherewithal to do it for ourselves. And we need people to ask those questions to hold us accountable, or at least make sure that we're doing the work properly. Right. And I found, like, I got through, we went through the holidays, and it was like my wife and I have been having, like, I've been having a small glass of wine at night with my wife, not enough to even really feel a buzz. And the reason I bring this up is because it's an odd sensation for me to have what a normal relationship is with anything, you know, whether it's what I'm doing, how I work, who I'm in love with, what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, like all these things. So it's a very odd sensation for me to be in that, I've never seen it. Like, I don't recall seeing my mother sober. You know, I don't, like, my childhood to me smells like stale beer and cigarettes. And I mean, it's a weird place it inhabits. So I've kind of enjoyed, like, having that. And I'm sort of put myself on this thing where I was thinking about it the other day, and I'm like, well, how long is this going to last? And I'm like, you know what, we'll go through until February, and then that's it. And then I gave myself a time frame where, like, I'll have to cut it off for a while. We'll be through the dark ages, as it were. Like, you know, the dark winter months here will be gone. There'll be a lot more time after work to go out for a run or do things where it doesn't feel like you should be in bed. So I was like, okay. And that's what, you know, it was useful for that, but I'm sort of ready to move on from that anyways. And I feel like the couple extra pounds that I've added on has been between, you know, a 4-ounce pour of red wine and chocolate donuts.
Well, you're right, man. Everyone's sobriety looks different, and going into a 12-step program or something isn't the way for everybody. You know, I'm glad that it's there for the people that are successful with it, but it's not the way for everybody. And I can appreciate that, man.
Did you use 12 step or did you do it yourself?
Did. Yeah, I went to a 12. I mean, actually my story is, so I quit drinking on my own. And then continued to smoke weed and pop pills and whatever else came my way for another couple years, and then eventually kind of spun out of control with that, and then found myself in a 12-step. So I haven't had a drink for 6 years, but yeah, I'm only sober for the last couple years or so from everything else. So yeah, everybody's story is a little bit different. And, you know, with the 12-step thing, you know, I take what's applicable to me in my life and I use that, and I just discard the rest. You know, I used to be, I used to be this huge Bruce Lee fan, and that's how he created his martial art called Jeet Kune Do. Is he took pieces of boxing, he took pieces of wrestling and karate and the kung fu he learned to make his own style that works best for him and his body type. And I just kind of took that philosophy and I used that with not only my sobriety but everything in life.
Right on. You know, it's funny. I've got some of my friends that are like in my recovery friends, as I call them, some other chefs and whatnot. A lot of them, well, enough of them are in 12 step. And I did not do 12 step because I didn't think it was necessarily for me or not for me. It's just never it never dawned on me to go and do all that because I've always been more of a self-starter, self-doer type thing anyways. But the funny thing is that, and this is why, like, no matter what anybody say bad about 12 steps, because there's always people that got something to say where, oh, well, I'm not religious, and it means that they haven't really understood what it's about. Because, you know, if it's a roll of toilet paper, that's your higher power. That's a roll of toilet paper. That's your higher power. But for some odd reason, that part gets lost on people because they just hear this higher power thing and automatically think of a Christian God and not,
totally.
You could be God. You could be your higher power if you wanted to be. And having discussions with some of my sobriety friends, there's an intrinsic, I think, path that's in 12 step that's right. That there's elements about, well, actually at every step, there's something that needs to be done for anybody that's been addicted to substances and to fix themselves, their relationships with themselves and their relationships with everything around them. Because it really, and I'm sure there's more to it, but I mean, for me specifically, you know, it's about relationships, no matter what it is, no matter what it's with or who it's with. And that includes yourself and that includes the substances. And I discovered that sort of my recovery, I call it a salvage job, not so much as a recovery, because I realized that I was finding bits and pieces of me that had been lost or gone, or, you know, I figured forever. Some pieces will never come back, just because that's the nature of it. But I found that it inadvertently was mimicking a lot of what goes on in 12 steps, although maybe step 2 might happen at step 4, but like all the things were there for it. So it's, you know, I think even people that get sober that don't do 12 steps still do 12 steps. They just don't recognize, you know?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. It doesn't matter what if you have a problem with substance, alcohol abuse, drugs, whatever, you know, whatever it takes to get you healthy that fucking rocks. You know, that's what you need to do. How you go about doing it, as long as it's not like harming anybody around you or continuing harming yourself, knock yourself out. Totally. Like when I quit smoking cold turkey, and never went back. And, you know, I don't think that quitting smoking and like substituting it out with vaping is a great idea. And I would to me, it's sort of just as disgusting personally. But if it works for you, if that's what's going to get you to the end goal, do it. Whatever it takes. Yeah. You're not hurting anybody but yourself, but you're hurting yourself less. And if it's about harm reduction, I'm all for it.
100%. Yeah, man. And another thing you mentioned when you quit drinking was getting into pottery. And I can kind of relate to that too, because when I quit drinking, I got into painting, like abstract painting. I've always been sort of an artist and like the sketch and paint, but I got into it, man. And that became almost the new habit. And I poured all my energy into it. And that first year that I got sober, I must have painted 400 paintings, like a ton. And I'm guessing it was the same for you. You just kind of turned that energy into something artistic. And, you know, so you're able to stay present and work on this piece that you're working on, but you're also working through things in your head at the same time.
Yeah, and the pottery predated the sobriety, which is like hilarious because I'll go back and look at some of these posts that happened before it. And you know, the obvious metaphor, like when you're throwing clay, is that you have to center it on the wheel. Otherwise, you know, it's all over the place and your form doesn't work. And it was exactly the metaphor, especially where I was at that time of my life. It was exactly what I needed. Like I needed some centering. I'd always called I'd always, you know, whenever I was talking with people, I always proclaimed, well, I'm a Buddhist. I'm a practicing Buddhist. And the key word is practicing, because I wasn't really a performing Buddhist in the aspect where it's like, I had worked my way through some of the precepts and I tried to adhere to certain things, and never all at once. And nor do you necessarily have to, right? But the funny one is that as I started doing some meditation in the morning and I picked up journaling, and again, this is before I went sober, but started working through this idea of intentional living and having some purpose, having some intent, because I realized that my life was like with all this amazing stuff around me and a tremendous family, highly supportive. The fact that, you know, my marriage survived decades of me being a drunk idiot, is a testament to my wife's strength, but also like coming out of it. And I'm just like, it felt like I described my childhood. Like my life felt like that anyways. I'm like, how did I get here? Like you knew better, and then here you are. So like when I started doing pottery, and then that sort of brought me back into Buddhism. So I'm sitting, I get up every morning. I'm like, you got to get up every morning. You got to be intentional. You got to have practice. 20 minutes each morning, just sit. And that's, I mean, I'm a Zen Buddhist. And basically what I practice is just sitting quietly. Right. And once I stop letting my mind wander and started recognizing that these things happen inside of us and we don't have control over it. And the only thing we have control is how we react to it or how we attach to it. And, I started to recognize that I needed to learn how to let that go. And it was interesting because as I got through it, I started to recognize that, like, I've never, like, even when I was doing this when I was younger, you know, I was like this young bohemian when I was 25, 26, like, you know, drove out west and, like, you know, hung out in Arcata, went rock climbing and came back. And I've got this like collective of friends that are writers and musicians. And it was sort of like, you know, well, you're more like Kerouac. No, you're more like Burroughs. You're kind of like Ginsberg. And, like, you know, we fancied ourselves as this sort of like next great generation. And the thing was, I really just sort of pretended like I was only going through the motions, although there was something about it that transferred over from like the Rollins Nietzsche to the Buddhist Marc that made sense. Like the leap was not a leap. It was the natural connection of dots. You know, it was my Forrest Gump. It was just like, this happened and then this happened. Mm-hmm. So once I recognized that, like, the one thing I'd never actually done was given myself the opportunity to do this clear-minded. Like, what was I like? I knew I needed something, but I didn't know that I needed something. But I recognized that was a hurdle, and I think that was sort of the beginning for me. Was like, you know, maybe you should give this not drinking thing, because you recognize all these other things. You really just sort of lay in for a little while and see what goes on. Like I said, so that was like, you know, the first couple of days of my sobriety, that's what it was all these, you know, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to be intentional and whatnot. And it was wonderful for like 3 or 4 days until Thanksgiving. And then it just became about spite. I'm so petty at times.
Did you ever like hammer down and figure out like what the real reason was for your drinking? Did you come to any sort of conclusions or?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like I'm a typical child of the 70s. My parents divorced, and it was, you know, I was young, I was like right around 1973. I don't remember, like, I don't have I don't have a lot of memories of my parents together, and the few memories that still hang around, I have a pretty decent memory. Like, they're all sort of like violent, or, you know, argumentative, angry. There's not really, like, I don't recall a loving relationship between my parents. I mean, they were together right out of high school. My father went to Vietnam. My mother was pregnant with my sister. And, you know, there's question whether if he was the father or not, which, I mean, if you were to see, my sister's not alive now, but if I show you a picture of my sister, you'd be like, yeah, they're not related. you know? So there's all these things. Like my parents they were not prepared. I mean, they were the same age as my oldest son right now. He is not fucking ready to be a parent.
Right. Yeah.
He is nowhere near the maturity level to bring another human being in the world and be responsible for him. And my parents weren't either, you know? And I say this because of the fact that it's like, sometimes when I write about it, I think people look at it like, oh, he's pissed at his parents. I'm not. Like, I really try to empathize with where they were at. Mm-hmm. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing, you know? And this is like, I was conceived at Woodstock, and it's like, you know, there's like, my mother's this sort of like bohemian, easy rider type person who's tough as nails and an antagonist. I definitely have I'm wired like my mother, but my father's kind of like, you know, this sort of loudmouth, sports car driving, womanizing, semi-racist son of a bitch, you know? And it's just like, I don't know how the fuck they ended up together other than like, he was really good looking and she was super, like, she looked like Cher when she was younger, you know? It was like, other than that, like they didn't, like, I don't see, like nobody can see how these guys were together. So it's like, you know, I remember when my parents split up, and I mean, like we walked the family home, if you can call it that. Like it was brutal. It's the only time I really remember seeing my father cry. But the thing is, I don't think he was crying because the relationship was done. I think he was crying because he felt rejected. You know what I mean? And I didn't know it at the time, but it stuck with me because it's one of the few memories I have of that particular time frame in my life. And it's like, you know, through most of my childhood, I mean, my father was, you know, he drank. I mean, he came home one night, he had gotten into a bar fight. Somebody tried to slice his neck. Like he had stitches all the way down like this. I woke up one time, there was a house party going on. I'm like drinking with adults. When I say drinking, I mean like slamming old Ezra and like, just like, I went fucking wild on the drinking. And my mother's side was the same thing. And the thing is, that's how they dealt with shit, you know? So it's like, but the funny part is like when I got done with skateboarding with my shop and was getting ready to go to college, like I started writing these very like Henry Rollins style pieces, you know, and it was just, I mean, it's so fucking embarrassing, but it's your typical like 18-year-old, you know, it's me against the world type shit. It was like, you know, Planet Joe. It was like, it was all about like me and my fucking boots. It's like a walking man thing. It's like, I'm so fucking stoic and dark and like disciplined, and the world doesn't know what's going on. Like it was pathetic. But the thing was that my mindset, and it was like, you know, I looked at people that drank, and mind you, like I had plenty of experience with drinking myself at that point, but I was coming out of the Syracuse hardcore scene at the time, coming back to Utica, and it was like bands like Earth Crisis and whatnot, which they're still around. There's an odd connection with Earth Crisis and a couple of my friends. I'm friends with the guys, or at least a few of the guys in the band, but there's a whole other connection with that band and me. But like these guys were hardcore straight edge kids. Like it was everything that you ever heard about, you know, like New York hardcore straight edge, Boston hardcore straight edge. Syracuse was the same sort of way, probably a little more embracing of people than outside scenes, but still pretty aggro. And, you know, like I was not straight edge when I hung out with them, but I also didn't give them shit for doing that, you know? And it wasn't like I wasn't drinking a lot. I was doing a lot of psychedelics, but like I was smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, and doing psychedelics. I mean, that was primarily my life. So when I came back to Utica, and, you know, it's like, you know, I'm watching my mom drink and just thinking how weak that looks. And the funny part is, you know, I knew better, and I still ended up finding, you know, doing all that stuff. But, I mean, you know, my mother experienced she experienced a violent life. I've seen my mother brutalized by men in ways that nobody wants to see their mother brutalized. And, you know, the funny thing is like her and I, when she was still alive, we would have discussions where I was like, oh, we wouldn't change, you know, it's like, what a wild life, what a crazy life. We wouldn't change anything for the world. And like, we normalized this shit in ways that, like, you know, we just, I think we felt like, oh, well, you know, didn't bother us. We got through it. It was shitty at the time. It's like, I lived in my fucking mother's Honda with her for like 3 weeks under a bridge because we couldn't, like, the man she was married to, like, was looking to kick her ass, you know? Wow. It's like, it was just, it was not good. So to, you know, to sit as a young adult and have like conversations with your mother, and we're just kind of like patting ourselves on the back as survivors. But the thing is like, I don't know that we even knew what trauma meant, let alone how to deal with it, you know? And I started like, I think I started unpacking all this. My wife and I were out hiking one day, and I told her, there's a memory of my sister and I, when we were living in Florida, and my mother was getting beaten by my stepfather, and we went running out of the house at like 3 a.m. type shit. You know, it's like they had come home from wherever they were out partying, and shit just went sideways, and it went sideways. And I mean, it was like the bad kind of sideways, like seeing your mother get her arm broken and her nose broken and shit like that. And it's like, you know, I mean, I pissed my pants. I mean, that kind of violence is fucking horrible. So my sister and I go running out of the house, and we're like yelling at the top of our lungs. But the thing was, like my memory of it was, I couldn't yell louder than a whisper, like whether my voice was hoarse or, you know, whatever, like I couldn't yell loud enough. But the funny thing is like, when I say the funny thing is, like the memory of that is so succinct. And I think that even though I always kind of remembered it being there, when it came up, when her and I were walking, it really started to unravel the next layer of stuff. And I never used the word trauma before. Like I didn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't part of my lexicon. There was no reason for it. And I started to see the metaphor for like those, you know, I'm sure everybody's had those types of dreams where they try to run, but they can't get into it feels like you can't get out of the starter block position. You're almost running on all fours, and your legs don't have, like, they're tired. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that.
Oh, totally. Like you're in quicksand or something.
Yeah. You know, and that's how it felt in real life. But I think that, you know, there was so much related to that. And it's so funny that running would unpack all that for me. You know, and of course it would. And again, like I said, I'm a fucking cliche. And, you know, there's a whole publishing industry of white guys that grew up listening to punk rock music, that became addicts, that found, you know, some inner peace through trail running. And it's, you know, and like at any other time in my life, I'd be like, oh, I got to go find something else to do. Like, oh, well, if they're going to do that, then I'll hang glide through it or whatever, you know. It's so nice to, like, you know, to be in a place where I'm at peace with that, and actually, like, there's a legitimate sense of happiness. It doesn't, by all means, my life is still far from perfect. I make mistakes every day. I'm still bumbling my way through relationships, but you know, I think getting clean and sober and getting into running is one thing, and getting to unpack all this other shit in enough time to hopefully make sure that I can properly repair any damage that I've done to my own sons. I mean, I try to speak very honestly about it. They see my posts. I try to speak honest. I try to make sure when they ask questions, and I don't judge. I mean, they're at the age where they're drinking, they're trying weed, they're doing all these other things. And it's not my job to tell them not to do it. It's my job to remind them that that there are genetic predispositions for certain things, and to be aware. But by all means, I mean, now is the time when they're young. They're supposed to experience all this stuff. And it's funny because I was talking about my youngest, my children are, we could do a whole podcast on the dichotomies of my kids, but my youngest has this, like, fantastic little life, in a way that, like, I'm jealous of. And not that my oldest doesn't. I mean, he's done so many cool things. But my youngest, like, you know, he's not even 19, and he traveled to France, and then he went to Italy recently. And, you know, he's got an old truck that he recently, well, it's old, it's a 1993, but it's funny. It's like, you know, that's an old truck now into my mind. Old trucks from the 70s. And he lives in a lake house. And we went up to finally go visit, like, this lake house that he's living in. And we come rolling in, and there's like this fucking huge bag of weed on the dining room, like on the kitchen table. And I say huge bag of weed, I'm not like, oh my God, there's a bag of weed there. It's like, you know, it's like, you know, 2 Big Macs worth of weed in a bag. And you know, then he shows us his bedroom, and there's like a bottle of frickin' bourbon in his closet and whatnot. And then I was like, you're not smoking cigarettes, are you? Like, out of all the things going on, it's like, please don't. Like, that's the one thing I don't want him to ever start.
Right,
like,
right.
I can't believe I let myself smoke. It's so gross. It's so gross. And I'm like, I can't believe I paid so much money for something that's so bad for me. Like, and I should have known better. And I was like, whatever.
Yeah, well, we both should have known better, and a lot of different things. And that's just the way.
I think that's gonna be on my tombstone,
dude. Should have known better. I'm a slow learner, and it's unfortunate, but that's just how it is, man. It sounds like Rollins kind of gave you Nietzsche. that's who he kind of introduced you to. Was that kind of the big thing for you that you took away from Rollins? Because I remember the big thing that I took away from reading his stuff was he introduced me to the writer Thomas Wolfe. And I ended up reading all of his stuff and becoming completely obsessed with Thomas Wolfe. But it sounds like that's kind of the one thing that you almost took away from that. Or
yeah,
like,
I mean,
it was the next evolution.
Rollins, I mean, you know, when I wrote that post on there, it's like, by no small means, I mean, he's sort of the, you know, when you have your childhood, right? And then you become a young adult, you sort of get into your own. And then like, there's that, whatever that is. And like, for me, that was like God's finger, like hitting the freaking, the router. Like I was online. Like he said the word Nietzsche and I went online. I didn't know what it was, but the idea of that which does not kill you makes you stronger. Like, of course, to somebody who suffered trauma, didn't even know what the fuck it was. Of course that would speak to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course it would. But it took me decades to even recognize sort of all of that. But I mean, you know, God, I mean, I'm not a fanboy for too many people. Like I appreciate so many people, but there's very few. Like I don't hero worship people. Maybe probably Muhammad Ali and Evel Knievel. Without a doubt, I've always been like, you know, I mean, they're the perfect archetype. And then, you know, I don't like Rollins is the only other dude who I think I even got like weird when I finally met him at a hardcore show and was able to like go up there. Like I'm rarely drawn to go like, oh, look, there's a famous person, you know. Bill Murray would be one more. And I actually ran into Bill Murray in Charleston and he was walking around with Lewis Black.
Oh, wow.
And walking, and it was like, we knew that because like a bunch of my friends had like, I've got like my friends would be at Charleston Food and Wine on the years that I didn't go and they'd send me pictures of them at a party with Bill Murray. And I'm like, fuck you guys. Cause like, I've always wanted a Bill Murray story.
Of course. Yeah.
We go down to do Charleston Food and Wine, and like the city of Charlotte paid for a bunch of us to go down, and they paid for my documentary company to go down, not mine, but the one that I was involved with, I was part of. And you know, that was like the whole thing is like, we got to find we have to find Bill Murray for Marc. And I'm getting ready to get out of there. And it's like, I got to drive home. And like, I'm already thinking, all right, if I leave and I'm like, you ever seen the Goldbergs, the TV show, The Goldbergs? All right. Well, there's a TV show called The Goldbergs, and there's like the father is the type of guy that like will leave before like the hockey game's over and end up missing like the once in a lifetime shot. Yeah, that's me. He's my spirit animal. I'm like, I don't want to deal with lines in traffic because it's inefficient. So I'll fucking leave before like the encore comes on. Be like, let's go beat the traffic. I'm such an old man. Yeah. So I was like, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Like, I want to get out of here before everybody starts to bounce out. And on top of it, I was already thinking about this spot back home. I was like, I just wanted some ramen. So I'm walking and I get to this corner and I've got my earbuds on and I'm like, I'm hauling ass. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the chef walk, but we don't walk slow. Imagine fast hiking in the city. That's me.
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm trucking. And I turn to look and I see Bill Murray and I see him with Lewis Black and I see them with two women. And there was a whole conversation that went on where it's like, I see you seeing me and I see you seeing me with like family stuff. And I'm hoping, you know, and it's like, I'm hoping that you understand this stranger not to come talk to me. And I was just kind of like, but he didn't like put out an aura where I was like, don't do it. Didn't shake his head. It was just real quick and passing. It was just kind of like, gave him the freaking, you know, the head nod a little bit and just kept walking, like too cool to even speak to you anyways. And as soon as I got out of the corner, I call my partner up for thinking, dude, I just saw Bill Murray. And he goes, did you say hi? And I was like, no, I couldn't. He was with his wife or girlfriend or whatever. And I'm like, I didn't want to be that dude.
Yeah.
But with Henry Rollins, like I don't care where he's at. I would like in a heartbeat, like I would chase him down and be, oh my God. Because I mean, you know, it's funny. I mean, like, you know, you hear people say all the time, like certain things save their lives. And for me, like hardcore punk rock music saved my life, even though it's
me too,
you know, but like, if it wasn't for hardcore and punk, like I never would have got into skating. And if I didn't get into skating, I wouldn't have ended up becoming like a writer. And if I didn't become a writer, you know, then this, like the Dave Grohl thing, this sort of Forrest Gump, like, I think that's why I love his story, because he recognizes this sort of like, you know, this genesis that happens, not just for everybody or not just for him, but for everybody. Just with him, it's, you know, fucking Paul McCartney or, you know, Ravi Shankar or, you know, Tom Petty, you know, anybody else like that. But for me, it was, I lay it all on Henry Rollins. I mean, when I first heard My War in 1985, I was in a very dark place, and that shit probably kept me from killing myself, even though it's a heavy album,
Yeah,
super heavy album. And I was definitely in a space where puberty and some other, my own particular mental problems were all coming into a head. I don't harp on that too much because I feel like sometimes it can feel or sound petty or whatever. And I don't feel like anything that I went through at that time was as strong as like what other people are definitely going through. I think everybody has ideas of suicide at some point. It doesn't mean, this ideation. I think sometimes it's just, of the brain rewired and sort of this thing going like, it's just overwhelmed, and the only way that you can manifest it is this idea of shutting it off. And the only way that you can think about shutting it off is by death. And so that's how it comes about. I feel that some people's urges are stronger. Some of them are undeniable. Some people just have to follow through. I think I was number one. I don't feel that I felt it as strong as some people, but also number two, I think ultimately, I was probably too fucking scared anyways. Thank God.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
I've said that I've had this conversation with a few people before in the past, and I think they recognize that as well. And I think, those are things like with Rollins spoken word stuff specifically, where I realized I wasn't alone. That there were other individuals out there that were capable of like complex thoughts and emotions, because, all we go back to this presentation thing. And I think this sort of was where I wanted to head with it originally was, we see these presentations of people that seem so well adjusted. And I mean, we're all a fucking mess. We all have such messy lives. Some people are really good. And I mean, I'm fairly certain that there are people that many points in my life, they were like, he seems to have his shit together. I mean, I think I'm sure that there was probably a lot of them who were like, oh, fuck, that guy's a mess.
What do things look like for you nowadays? I mean, you mentioned that you practice meditation, you're running almost every day. As a former alcoholic who had that addictive tendency to get obsessed with things, do you still have that tendency now, even though you've taken the alcohol away for the most part? But
no. I mean, I don't, yeah and no. So it's, it's funny. I look at my youngest, and I'll tidy this in, I promise. I think I've always had, like, he's like me, like he's a Renaissance man in this sense of the word. And even my dad is to a certain degree. Like, if I get into something, I'm all in. Like, I want to know everything about it. And then I may never do anything with it. At some point I may just like pottery. Like, I haven't done it in a couple of years. I've had people like, oh, can you, remember those Japanese tea bowls you were making? Can you make me some of those? And I'm like, I mean, I could, but I'm not really into it right now.
Sure.
So I guess in a roundabout way, that part's wired in anyways. And whether that's nature and nurture, that, or a combination of, whatever it was, that switch got flipped. So when I said no, but also yes, because it's like, when I first got back into running, I was just, it's like I did a 5K. The only reason I did the 5K was so I could run at the airport, because it was like they shut the section of the airport down so you could run on a runway. And like,
oh, really?
Charlotte Douglas Airport is, I mean, it's an international airport. You're running under fucking airplanes. I've never done that before, so I was like, I'll do a 5K.
Oh, yeah, that sounds cool.
I mean, for not running in forever, and like, I did decently. I mean, I pulled it off in 32 minutes and 32 seconds for somebody who hadn't run in decades. Really, I'm like, that's not bad.
Nice.
But also for somebody who ran half that time as a 5K when he was actually running, like, it's kind of an embarrassment too. And I'm a competitive motherfucker. So I sort of got back into it, but I just figured it'd be a way for me and my wife to do something together. And again, she doesn't enjoy running, but she is not like, she got home from work, she's working out right now. Like, she is constantly doing something every day.
Girl. Nice.
I don't know where she gets the energy, because I'm like, sometimes I get home and I'm like, I'll just put it on the couch, click on the TV. So, but once I got out on the trails and started running, when I was 1984, 2004, I think it was, Runner's World magazine. They did a thing on I think it was the second year of the Leadville 100. And I had just run a local marathon. And, you know, to me, that was as far as any human being could run, right? I mean, the guy died. That's the story. So it's like, you know, I just ran as far as any human being could run. And I did it, you know, and I was like, at 13 years old, I'm like, look at me. And then I read this thing about Leadville and I'm like, 100 fucking miles. Like my head actually exploded. Like I couldn't wrap my head around anything about that. And it just stuck in my head. Cause I'm like, I read that thing and I was like, both, I was enthralled in a way that was like scared of it. Mm-hmm. Like the idea of running 100 miles is so fucking scary. Like you can't imagine what that's got to feel like, you know? And there is a fear of like, I think of pushing ourselves at any particular time. But I think for people whose nature or nurture is switched in such a way that they are drawn to things that are sometimes that element of fear or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think that that just locked into my head. And I'm not a big bucket list guy. Like, oh, I've got to do this before I die. Like, I don't need to jump out of an airplane. I'm perfectly good not doing that. You know, it's like, I love rock climbing. I have a fear of exposure that just like, I always thought I had kind of a fear of heights. And when one of my climbing buddies pointed out when we were in Arcata and I was like on this corner and it's like wide open sky. And it was like only 30 feet up off the ground at that point. Like I've been at that height many times and I was just like, dude, I'm shitting my pants. Yeah. He's like, he goes, it's the exposure. It gets you every time. Right. So the idea of Leadville just kind of like, it's always hung in the back of my head. And I've always been fascinated by people that are willing to push past, like, you know, my father was a big fan of mountaineering, and I've always been a fan of mountaineering. Probably got it from him. I mean, when I was a kid, it was like, you know, I read My Side of the Mountain, and you know, it's just like my plan. It's just like the Walking Man stories when I was a kid. Like, who doesn't want to live in a tree with a falcon? I do. But you know, it's like something that normal people don't do, right? Like that required something. So I think there's like this archetype that has always been like, for me, that's been a mythos, like that I'm attracted to. So the idea of people doing like Ironman or, you know, doing these super long kayak trips or, you know, whatever it is, but things that really push endurance. Yeah, I did a rod, like just all this shit. Like I love people where the real challenge is themselves and how far they can push. Yeah. So, you know, when I started back up running and I think it was the first time I got past, like, you know, got past a 15K on a trail run. This is the first, you know, my first summer back running or whatever. And it's like, I'd signed up for a race. It was called Killer Creek, and they had, 50K was their furthest distance. And then they had a 25K and like a 4-mile race and something in between. And, it's an 8-mile. And I was like, I'm going to sign up for the 8-mile because I know I can run 8 miles. Like, not a problem. I'm like, I'm definitely not ready for anything past that. But I really wanted to, like, the 16-miler was sort of already hanging on my peripheral. Like, my sister had passed away. She was a police officer in Austin, was killed in the line of duty, like weeks of coming out of academy. She had owned restaurants, had worked as a investment banker, was one of her bucket lists was to have $1 million in the bank, and she was almost there. Mind you, this is somebody who had a child when she was 15, came from the same sort of poverty and violent background that I came from, and she really made something of herself. But she always wanted to be a cop. I was always the robber when we were kids. She was always a cop. But she really wanted to do it, so she had to sell her restaurant. She had to take care of all this stuff. But she went to academy. Like I said, I think she was 1 week into being out of the academy and on the force. Was supposed to be on bike patrol at the University of Austin, and some people pulled rank and whatnot, and they put her and her partner in a car, and they stopped to speak to an individual who looked like they were doing something shady, smelled like weed. They did a little computer lookup, found out there was a warrant out for the guy. The guy started to run. My sister is also a phenomenal runner. Her husband is like a championship kickboxer, has trained people to box and do karate for his entire life. My sister was a black belt. So she chased this dude down, managed to, wrestle him to the ground. Her partner ran back in the car. The dude broke free. She started running after it and running after him. And her business partner basically slammed her between a telephone pole and the car basically cutting her in half.
Oh my God.
And this was on Halloween. Right. So I get a phone call at 4:00 in the morning. And it's so weird I didn't even bring this part up because this broke me. Like I think I was probably teetering most of my life. And after that was it. Like I just flipped. The amount of grief that I had carried already in my life, it became too much to bear. And so anyways, this opportunity to run 16 miles on the anniversary of my sister's death, 16 years after it, it was like it was too succinct, right? Like the universe was saying like, dude, hello, like you have to do this. You have to do this. So, I kept in touch with the race directors and said, hey, when do I have to make a decision? And like, they were familiar with sort of what was going on. They're like, you can tell us day of if you want, whatever you want to do. So, it became sort of a long, the impossible goal. And 60 miles, like we all know, it's not very long, but when you're first starting back out, 60 miles is still long enough. Huge. Right?
Yeah.
So, I managed to, I ran the 16 miles and somewhere around mile 13, I had one of those very liberating moments of with my sister's grief and her memory. And I was able to I broke down in absolute tears in the way that you do when you're running far longer distances, when the emotions get so strong. Cause you run that long in your head, what happens. Oh, yeah. And for me, I was there. I came out of that race and I had purged, 16 years of grief in a way that I was unable to do it before. And immediately afterwards, it was the only thing I could think about is I was like, you have to, it's always been like, you have to do 100 miles. You have to do it. Ultimately, if I'm able to do a Leadville, that would be fantastic. I mean, some people it's Western States. For me, it's Leadville because that was what I heard. Yeah. So last year I did right around April, I did a timed event and it was 8 hours and I ended up podium. I ended up pulling a podium on that one, second place. It was my first time going into an ultra distance. Like I'd done some of the Yeti on virtual challenges, like 24s and 48 hours, but not a whole one. And, I was uncertain whether I was like where I was on the last lap. Like, I'm going to end up like 2 minutes behind when I come onto that last little loop. Like I'm going to time out right in front of the damn thing. And the race director's running up and I'm like expecting to come deliver the bad news. Like, hey dude, just so you know, you timed out, like this last lap doesn't count. And he came up and asked me, he's like, hey, when's the last time you podiumed? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. I think it was like 15 years old. And he goes, well, you're about to. And I was like, fuck, we better go.
Nice.
So I ended up pulling second place. And that kind of like, that got the competitive guy in me going, which isn't always a good guy. And immediately, I think it was like a couple of weeks after, they decided they were going to do this 100-mile race called Unico. So I signed up for it, sight unseen, and ended up flaming out towards the tail end of the last year. My hip flexors went out. Like it was the worst possible way to end my year that I could imagine at the time. I still went to the race, I crewed all day for everybody that was there, but I started the new year out still sort of injured, but with a renewed sense. So it's like I've got about 6 races that I'm doing this year, but normally I'm like, I'll sign up for every single one of them and not have any plans whatsoever. So this year I'm like, yeah, one goal at the end of the year, and that's to get 100 miles up under your belt. It's kind of, and on top of it, I don't have any competitive goals. Cause initially last year it was like, fuck, if I pull second place, this one, all I gotta do is push harder. And I had a decent base, but I didn't have enough base to start pushing the mileage, or pushing the pace that I was doing without injuring myself. And I just I did it. Going back to all those bad habits that I was taught when I was in high school, overstriding, even though I land on my toes, still opening way too wide. That knee injury caused me to change my biomechanics. Even though I have a very nice butt, according to my wife, my posterior chain is weak. So my hip flexors are doing like the work I'm supposed to do. It's all these things. So, it's all about progress. So this year, I'm back to when I first when I got back into running this time around, where I was like, I just want to do it because I love it. Not for Strava, not for likes and dislikes. I'm not trying to show off on social media. I want to share my messages on stuff, and I want to keep people that have responded well or felt inspired by about my story and what I share. I want them to do the same. So I don't want to be like, I don't want to be that guy that's pushing people like, the only way is no guts, no glory. Like I'm not. And this year is not about that. Like I had my 2A goals for both of my races, and then I've had B and C plans as well, knowing full well that plans change, life happens. We had an outbreak of COVID at work. I ended up finally catching COVID. Luckily, I'm fully vaccinated, so it was really mild. Longest vacation I've ever actually had in 20 years. It was 10 days at home. Thank you, COVID.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm just keeping my eyes on the prize. I got a little quick this year. I saw my times coming down pretty fast, and I was doing more, I was getting my base on the road at first, just to make sure that I wasn't aggravating my hips or anything like that. And I ended up having a slight aggravation. I just had to rethink everything. So I'm finally have my Buddhist mentality and my long distance running and my sobriety perfectly balanced for, like I said, I'm weirdly happy for the first time in my life for no big reason whatsoever. And that's probably the best reason at all.
Nice.
The best for all.
Beautiful. That's it right there. That's what it's all about. Do you have a 100-miler you have your eyes on?
Yeah, I've already signed up. So it's the same one, Unico.
Okay.
We got guys from Vagabond Endurance, which is a local crew here out of Charlotte, two brothers, Dan and Rory. They were the guys that did that race that I was talking about, the 16-miler. So I think they got 6 races in a buckle this year. So it's sort of like, if you run all 6 races that they're doing a buckle series, but they're still doing the 100-miler for Unico. And I think number one, going out and seeing it for the, being part of it without running it gave me, I was able to, I collected a lot of data while I was there. I was seeing what worked, what didn't work, and how it applied to me, because some of the guys that were successful aren't necessarily running like me or running for the same things that I'm running for. But there was enough that I saw that work that I said, this translates, I can do this. So I think I've got a better, healthier plan. And I'm basically everything that I'm doing. I've got a race next weekend. It's a 60K up 3 mountains here, Morrow Mountain. Morrow Mountain and 2 other ones. And normally I'd be like, I'm gonna have to go out and run this really hard. And I'm like, I love running uphill. So this is geared for me. It's a training run.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing Damn Yeti 50-miler in June. And although I have some time goals on that one, again, it's a training run. I only have one goal this year, and that's to do the 100 miles. So it's like, if I come in DFL, sweet. Yep. If I come in, as long as I come in DFL uninjured, because that's the one thing I don't want. I don't want to deal with that this year. It's like everything this year is about being healthy, being strong, and being ready to do that. So I think once I get that done, then I can honestly start looking at trying to get into something like Leadville while I'm still young enough to pull that thing off with enough time where I can enjoy a little vacation as opposed to spending it all out on the trail.
Dude, get to Leadville, man. I really hope you get to Leadville. I would love to pace you out here. I would love to be a part of it.
You guys are right out there. You're in Boulder, right?
I'm in Boulder. I'm 2 hours away from Leadville, man. Yes, man. I hope you find your way to Leadville. I'd love to pace you. I'd love to be a part of it. Try and make that happen, dude.
Well, the thing is, now that I know somebody out there, it's kind of it's a foregone conclusion for me.
It would be a full circle thing for you as well, because you read that article way back in the day. And dude, make it happen, dude. Make it happen. I'd love to be a part of it, man.
Well, and now I'm going to have to try to make that happen. It's funny when they had they had the things open. The registration opened up whenever it was, like November or something, or December. I can't remember. Anyways, one of my buddies from back home, who's also got like similar story, not with all the sobriety issues that I'm aware of, but he got back into running and doing ultras again. Then he sends me the link, through Messenger on Facebook, where it's like, registration's open for this. And I'm like, nah, man, this is not this year. One goal. That's it.
Yes.
Like, I'm not getting distracted. For the first time in my life, I'm not getting distracted.
Nice. Well, it sounds like a good plan, man. I mean, you slowly check these things off, get that one goal for the year under your belt, and then start working on next year, man. I mean, that's the way this stuff goes. You know that.
Hey, I'm finally growing up at 50, almost 52 years old. Finally, the dumbest smart guy you'll ever meet. That's me.
I love it. I love it, dude. Well, thank you for doing this, man. It was an honor to have you on the show. And dude, I just love talking to you. And I hope we can share some miles someday out in the mountains, like all
Absolutely.
night long, struggling and suffering. And yeah, dude, it'd be fun. It'd be fun.
Well, this has been great too. And I really appreciate, like, as soon as you and I connected up on Instagram and I was looking at the stuff that you're doing, I'm like, I got it. Like, this guy, like, you could just tell when somebody's on the same energy pattern that you're on. Yeah. I don't have energy pattern. That sounds so crystal-like, and I'm not like that new agey, but it's just, some people just sort of ring in the same vibrancy, the same, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
they're the same
vibration. Yeah, whatever.
That's the word.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that, like I said, I think the thing about trail running communities is, it's a growing section, but I still think that there's a core group of people that are drawn to it the same way that there's like that core group of people that are drawn to skateboarding, hardcore, even kitchens. It's this sort of like, I think I've always been drawn to the things where the lost and found end up. Because then I think trail running is sort of like, an ultra running is a lost and found. Skateboarding was a lost and found. Hardcore is a lost and found. These are sort of like oddly broken souls that just manage to come together for something really fucking cool.
Yes. Yeah, it's true, man. And half of us are recovering alcoholics, aging white dudes with tattoos, and but it's good, man. We all shake hands and hug at the end, and it's cool, man. Well, Marc, thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate you, and stay in touch and make Leadville happen next year, dude. And if not next year, a couple years down the road, but definitely look me up when it happens. I'm already in, dude. So yeah, just stay in touch and yeah, man. Keep doing big things and yeah, I love it. Love the story, man. So yeah,
awesome.
Keep doing what you're doing, brother.
You too, Adam. Podcasts like this, I think, are these long form podcasts, I think, are super important. So I don't know if you get enough accolades, but I think, even like, small podcasts, you need like a Rich Roll podcast is like, oh my God, it's so fucking big. But, it's like, I think the ones that are getting unknown, anonymous people, I think these are the important ones. So keep doing what you're doing. I really love your podcast.
Oh, thanks, dude. Yeah, I think the right people are listening to it. It's kind of underground, but I kind of like it that way. So
right on.
I appreciate that, man. Well, Marc, have a great day. Like I said, stay in touch, dude. You're badass.
Yeah, so are you. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate you.
Cool, brother. Have a good day.
You too.
All right.